Welcome everybody to the American Space Museum, where we preserve the birth of the American space program and ignite the future in space workers in our museum here in downtown Titusville. We welcome you, and beside me here is Larry Ostarly. Welcome, Larry.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you inviting me.
Well, Larry is a 4 decades long involvement with the American space program, including a long time with the shuttle. We're going to talk about his management positions in the shuttle. He also, I'm curious about his involvement with the Trident missile program, the missiles on submarines that are keeping America's freedom across the globe. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But we're here in our shuttle gallery, and we want to let you know that we are proudly bringing you the Stay Curious program, and we've opened up our museum this week. Its doors for the first time in this pandemic. In fact, I gave a docent tour today at about noon to a couple from Orlando. So we welcome you to email us, contact us on the phone, and we also have a direct link on our Facebook and our website that you can make reservations at 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, or 2 o'clock. And we're going to limit to 10 people during those tours. And it's working out fine, but we need you back in here to support us. We've got 2 beautiful new galleries, a Hubble Space Telescope Gallery and Space Workers Gallery. And part of why we've been doing this the last 6 months with our Stay Curious program is Larry Osterly's on our board of directors here at the Space Museum, and we're glad that you are, Larry. And we really enjoy that the board has supported what our executive director Karen Conklin's wanted to do during this pandemic, basically refreshing the museum and bring this program to you that's become quite popular beyond our wildest dreams. I attribute that a lot to our great team of people here that are behind it, but no more so than my friend Marty Winkle behind the camera, true American space worker, and Larry, I consider all of you space workers somewhat of national treasures, what they bring to the museum. One-of-a-kind experience that only you're going to hear here. So we're glad that you're with us today. We're going to have a great conversation with Larry Osterly here. We have no birthdays today other than the late John Young. I think would have been 89 years old today. And we certainly miss John Young, just about everybody's favorite astronaut. I had the privilege to interview him twice in a pool of reporters. Just an extraordinary man. I can't imagine what kind of a person he was around NASA, because he was so focused and wanted so curious about everything John was. So we'll also just mention we're open. We may have lost $50,000 in just walk through the door admissions and merchandise during this 6-month pandemic. So we certainly need your support with bushel baskets full of these Benjamins here. And there's many ways you can support us. A $45 individual membership, no matter where you're at in the world, goes a long way to help us out. We have family memberships and other levels of involvement, but also you can log on to our American Space Museum eBay presence, where we have over 100 items. All of them came 10 miles away from Kennedy Space Center, where I'm sitting, through our door. We're offering to you, many of them are under $50, to own something about our wonderful American space program. We sell that on our eBay. We're always putting new things up there. So buy a trinket, something that you can put on your mantle or in your scrapbook that has to do with the American space program. We thank you for that. Well, I'm going to introduce Larry Osterly again and give you a little bit of his background before I shut up and have hear from this gentleman. I'm impressed with the fact that he's the recipient of the Kurt Dibis Award. This is 2018 from the National Space Club Society, which honors the significant achievements and contributions made in Florida to the American aerospace efforts. And Larry, you got that award in 2018 for all of your career, basically. Kurt Dibis being the first director of Kennedy Space Center. Just what did that mean to you to be honored that way?
So when you receive an award like that, first of all, you say, why me?
Yes.
because there's so many deserving people, and it's with great humility and you recognize that it's not an award for yourself. It's for the people that you work with throughout your career and the team that you were part of and that you enjoyed and became successful with. So I just viewed it as a tremendous honor, and I liked the fact that they recognized myself and the people that I worked with.
Good. And I believe this is a picture of you and your wife when you received that award, right? Let me pull that up there. This is
Where's that?
a little bit of his scrapbook there. Looking good.
Actually, that was something else.
Oh, that was something else? Okay.
But that was my wife. That was at a dinner. But
What's your wife's name?
Elva.
Elva. Okay.
Elva. Yeah, we've been married for 50 years.
50 years
50,
married.
50
Wow.
short years.
Wow. Getting to know each other pretty
just
good, huh?
Pretty good.
And there you are with astronaut Ken Bowersox.
And that's Ken Bowersox. And actually, if you remember Tool Time with TV show.
Tim Allen.
With Tim Allen a while back. Ken Bowersox was on Tool Time, and Tim Allen was trying to steal some of the shuttle tools.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so that's actually what I talked to Ken about, was his being on that.
I've seen some of those old Tool Times, and he also had the crew of the first repair crew of Hubble up there.
He did, and that's what it was. That's what they based the show on.
Yeah, with Kathy
and
Thornton.
He had the tools, and
yeah,
and he had brought them to Tool Time, and Tim Allen was trying to steal the tools. So
well,
it's kind of a cute little show.
Really astronauts do appear in our pop culture quite a bit.
Enjoyed meeting Ken. It was very nice.
Well, currently Larry is Senior Vice President of Operations for Amentum, which has morphed from EG&G and AECOM, AECOM, and me being just here 3 years amongst these wonderful space workers, it is so confusing how these companies have changed names and
try being a space worker.
Yeah, try being a space. But my question is, the checks always come to the bank at the proper time, right? They always seem to find your check in the right place.
So Amentum's kind of an interesting, catchy name. Because when we first heard it, we said, why Amentum? Well, Amentum is the little leather strap that's on a javelin in the ancient Greek mythology, which gave it stability and velocity when you threw it.
Okay.
So I always say we're not the tip of the spear. We give it stability and velocity and momentum to be successful.
Well, that's neat. That's neat. Larry previously held leadership positions at United Space Alliance, where Marty Winkle also worked as a USA electrical engineer and on the space launch system, on the engines. You're a director of ground support systems, which I'm sure is no easy job of responsibility for day-to-day leadership and overall management of the shuttle operation, and also involved with the processing facilities of the shuttles, the OPFs that we're sitting beside a replica of here, and also he was USA's Deputy Director of Orbital Operations, Deputy Director of Florida Program Office, and Technical Manager for the Integrated Project Management. And so USA, of course, you were originally first, you said, with Lockheed when they got the contract with the shuttle, and then you ended up working for USA, two of the major contractors that operate the whole USA. Tell us a little bit about that experience. Did you work with Mike McCulley, the astronaut that was over there?
So Mike McCulley, when he came to Lockheed at the time, I remember when I first met him, it was actually in the Launch Control Center in a little conference room we had up there, and he was talking about his background and stuff, and it became very obvious that he was, just like you saw on your show, very personable and easy to get to know, and certainly enjoyed working with Mike from the time he started there and watching him grow up through the ranks as a CEO of the corporation. He never lost touch with the people. It was a tremendous. He never
did lose touch with people, and that's what everybody says. Is he just was just rub the elbow grease with everybody. We had Mike McCulley on here a couple weeks ago. His wonderful conversation is archived on our Facebook videos and might be on our YouTube channel now. But something Mike has kind of rubbed off on me that I'm trying to do is he shared with us that he very much focused on one thing, And I'm a very discursive person. I got 3 or 4 irons in the fire, and I'm trying to pull back a few of those irons, and it's hard to do. But how about yourself? Is this kind of innate in nature in the business that you just kind of have to focus on one thing all the time?
You know, so in my roles now, I never found you could focus on just one thing because we always had a variety of things going on. I mean, between you know, just maintaining the schedule to process a space shuttle for launch. And you look at the launch countdown. The launch countdown was 4 days long, and the intimate detail is in that launch countdown. And you're pulling together facilities and tankers from New Orleans to come and fuel the shuttle, and all those different pieces are documented in a volume of a book, 3.5 inches thick. And so the details are captured for you. So I would say, yeah, you're focused on events at one time, but there's a lot of integral parts to that event that you really have to look at. And that's when I go back and say that really to do anything in aerospace, it's a team. It's truly a team sport, that it takes working with a huge team to make it successful, because there's so many pieces that have to come together to allow a launch to happen, from the beginning of processing for the mission to the actual launching of the mission, and then in the case of shuttle, the recovery of the mission. So it's pretty.
So what's the leadership magic wand to pull all that together? It seems like when I meet you gentlemen that have these roles, you got a really good personality. It seems like you know, you're a people person.
Well, I think, you know, I think you really do have to like people, and you have to be willing to get to know people. I mean, my personal management style is I like to get to know people by knowing a little bit about them and talking to them about themselves, and I would call it managing by walking around.
Managing by walking around.
Being in this COVID environment, it's really tough
Yes.
to do that, and so I'm not sure how style would evolve in this environment, because it would be difficult to do the things that I really enjoyed doing, which was getting to know the people, interfacing with the people, having a cup of coffee with them in the morning when I can, and getting the day started, and getting to know what their strengths are, and they learn what your strengths are, and you end up complementing each other, you know. And I believe you have to be effective. You got to be persistent, consistent. You got to have a little bit of patience, and you know, to help evolve things to where you want them to be. And I do believe the shuttle was truly a tremendous team that was made up of, you know, PhDs to someone right out of high school. And that's what made it successful, is all those people had their role and worked their role and knew their role, and we had a very successful program.
Well, we talked a little bit about how every shuttle mission, all 135 of them, you know, 1 million things have to go right.
Right. So yeah. So I always found it humorous when they would, they scrubbed. Oh God,
Yeah.
they scrubbed. Well, you think about the things you could scrub for. I mean, you scrub because there's lightning in the area. You scrub because one of those 1 million things didn't work. You know,
Overseas, the weather's bad.
Overseas, the weather's
bad.
You know, I mean, there's so
sites.
many things that drove scrubs, and you look at it. I think the big picture was we actually did launch close to 50% of the time on time. So it was pretty remarkable. Now there were some more challenging missions than others, and I remember one was called Astro, and it was on Columbia, and it had gone to the pad like 4 or 5 times in one mission because of various things. I think it's actually the one where the birds, the woodpeckers, may have chewed the tank.
That was one of the first astronomy missions with a bunch of telescopes on board.
So you think about, you know, who would ever think that woodpeckers would decide to eat a tank one day? But woodpeckers poked 200 holes in the tank, and it had to be brought back to the VAB, and each one of those holes had to be patched.
Wow.
And so it was, and I think that might have been that mission. I'm not sure. I could have the wrong mission.
But it did happen.
But it did happen. It did happen.
They
it was
put
a red,
owls up there. You had
it
to
was
have
a red
people with
flicker.
horns
Well,
and
that's
so forth.
so yeah. So that was the evolution of the owls on the pad and the horns and the water hoses and people up there trying to make sure the red flickers didn't try to make a nest in in the side of the tank. So
I heard a theory about that it was because that they cut the grass too short at KSC, and there was no natural bugs in the grass for the woodpeckers to eat.
I never heard that one.
So they let the grass grow longer. That's an urban legend that a space geek like me shouldn't be promoting. I guess, because if it's not true, it's not true.
It could be true.
I'm asking you. You know, Marty's shaking his head.
I've never heard it, but
so,
it could be true.
Yeah.
Generally.
Well, it was,
a lot of concrete around that pad and a lot of rock.
Yes, there is, isn't there? And we're kind of, backtracking a little bit on your career, which I like doing. What is Amentum involved with now on your day-to-day operations?
So Amentum, we have currently at Kennedy, we have two primary contracts. We have what they call the Propellants and life support contract, where we provide the high volume helium and nitrogen for the vehicles that fuel. So what's really cool about that contract is it interfaces with every mission. Every mission, whether it be on the Air Force side or the NASA side. And in addition, when you see those, I think you have a scape suit hanging in here someplace.
We've got a scape suit in our new Space Workers Gallery.
Yeah, so the scape suits, so we process and maintain those scape suits, which is pretty neat. They're almost like spacesuits on the ground.
Marty was checked out to be in a scape suit in the Apollo and Shuttle era, right, Marty?
Just Apollo.
Oh, just Apollo. Okay.
That's pretty cool. And then
putting them hypergolic fuels in that LEM.
And then our other contract is what they call the Lab Service and Support Operations contract. And I think you had one of our individuals on last week, the plant guy, Studi.
Yeah, Gary Studi.
Gary Studi, he's
the plant guy. Another great conversation to look up. We learned so much with Gary, and he was teasing that he's been growing plants in space for 20 years, and they finally let him eat a piece of lettuce.
So the R&D. So we have the R&D labs and we have the operations labs, which are pretty interesting, and that's the first time they've actually integrated both the operations labs and the R&D labs into a single contract. So we're very pleased to have won that and continue to do that. And that's our current work at Kennedy. Prior to that, we had the institutional support contract, which we just recently, to our chagrin, lost to a company called PSP. But that's part of being in the government business. You contract for work and you chase work, and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It's more fun to win.
Yeah, that's I get a real sense from you about the contractor's world that sometimes you're going to get it, sometimes you're not, sometimes you just got to roll with the punches. Most of you space workers end up on your feet no matter what happens, it seems like.
Yeah, no, the only ones that generally move, and even then some of them come back because they find they need the knowledge. When they lose to another company, there's generally very few people that truly get displaced. I mean, the biggest displacement of people at Kennedy was actually the end of Shuttle, which was beyond anyone's control to manage that. But what's been interesting to watch in the last decade is how everything is starting to ramp up and come back, and the unique things that are going on in aerospace. I mean, you look at SpaceX and Elon Musk and the things they're doing and the amount of launches they're having. You look at where NASA's headed with the SLS, and eventually we're going to end up back on the surface of the moon, and they're going to colonize the moon. We're going to have just like we have a presence on space station, we're going to have a presence on the moon. It's going to be awesome.
You've lived here a long time. I've just lived here a little over 3 years, and I see the impact. I mean, how exciting is it after the shuttle program ended? Seriously, the Space Coast, Titusville, some areas, they become ghost towns, but they're hurt financially by all that good aerospace money in the area. How exciting is this to live here and see this coming back?
Actually, I think everyone's excited, and you look at Blue Origin and the facilities they're building, the continuous missions from the Air Force side. I think we're really launching more rockets today than have ever been launched on the Space Coast. And it's easily going to grow to 30 to 35 next year, and I do believe, one day you will get to that magic number of 50.
Yeah, the 45th Space Wing's shooting for 48,
right.
A year. I think we're up to 24 this year.
Yeah.
But what, there's a lot of extra support comes around, good business brings in other business.
Right.
And we're seeing that in the hotels being built.
Well, you look at our hotel industry, that's another one. The hotel industry has never been bigger
Right.
than it is here. It's a shame that they had to take a hiatus because of COVID, but the reality of it, there's never been more hotels in Cocoa Beach than there are today. You got a couple of new hotels going in Titusville. It's just, I would say the enthusiasm for space has never been greater.
As exemplified by the launches and the popularity of them, and I can personally wait for the New Glenn rocket to take off from Pad 36, which is right near the lighthouse at the tip of Cape Canaveral there. Jeff Bezos, his New Glenn rocket's huge. It's almost, I mean, it's
And we used to launch this one at Complex 46, which is right across from 36. So
Okay.
we were right on the tip with Trident II when we were doing the flat pad launches.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. Let's jump into that you actually come into the space industry. You were a University of Central Florida graduate, UCF, in '83, and tell us about and first tell us a little bit about '83. Okay.
Well, let me go before '83.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Sure.
So no, I got out of the Navy in 1977,
Uh-huh.
April of '77, and I actually was headed to New Orleans, which is where I'm from, to take a job with IBM. And I got a call from a buddy who I worked with at the Polaris Missile Facility up in Bremerton, Washington, when I was in the Navy. And he asked me if I wanted to come to work for Lockheed Missiles and Space Company in Sunnyvale. So I was in Philadelphia in the shipyard on the ship getting out. It was like February. He made arrangements to fly me out, and I flew out there and I interviewed in a polyester blue leisure suit with a nice silk shirt with what did we call those shoes back then? The ones with the high-heeled shoes that the guys wore.
Platform
shoes.
Yeah, I had a few
You know,
of those.
yeah.
Wow.
The only good news about that interview, the guy sitting across from me was a little bit older than me, but he had on the lime green leisure suit with the platform shoes. And, you know, by the end of the interview, he offered me an opportunity. So I called my wife and asked her if she minded if we moved to Sunnyvale. It was a little bit more money. I said, you know, Lockheed Missiles and Space sounds way cooler than IBM.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So we moved to Sunnyvale, and you know, that was really the fork in the road. You know, when you get to the fork in the road, you take the fork. I'm not sure it matters
That's
which
right.
fork you take, but you take the fork. And it gave me my opportunity to work with Lockheed. And eventually, in 1980, I came down here with Lockheed on the shuttle. I mean, on the Trident.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
and my boss was very clear. I mean, because I'd been going to school forever, never managed to finish because I always had a little too much fun. He was very clear, you will finish.
Oh, okay.
You will finish. And it was the best advice that anyone's ever truly given me because, you know, your degree really does open up opportunities. So it's not that you have to have a degree to be successful, but having a degree allows you to expand your opportunities. And I do believe that when Mr. Jerry Owens, what I really considered a mentor at Lockheed, did that, it opened up the doors and provided me the opportunities that I've had. So.
Yes, there's so many forks in the road. The older you get, the more you realize those forks, what ifs, and so forth. But when it brings you to where you're at and you're happy, you know, it's all worked out.
So,
a little bit about New Orleans, being from there. Gee, you got some friends and family there, I'm sure. How's things happened the last couple of weeks there?
Well, actually, so I just had my birthday, and I heard from 5 of my 6 siblings, so that was good.
Okay.
They all live within a 20-mile radius of each other outside of New Orleans or the town of Covington, which is across
Okay.
the lake from New Orleans. And they're doing, actually everything's going pretty well there. They've gotten past the majority, you know, they had a major COVID problem because of Mardi Gras.
Mm-hmm.
They got past that. They really didn't get hit by the hurricane, so that was not a problem for them. They have been hit in the past, but they didn't get hit this past time, and they're doing well. It was nice hearing from all of them.
So is your job taking you to some of the NASA facilities there, like Michoud and so
I've gone to
forth?
Michoud. It's been a while since I've been to Michoud, but yeah, I've gone to Michoud. I've gone to White Sands out in New Mexico. Gone to Houston several times, been out to Ames, been up to Goddard, so have had a lot of opportunity, you know. I was going to talk a little bit about Trident, since that was one of your,
I'm bringing out some
since that was one of your things you wanted to learn
some
a little
visuals
bit.
here. I'm real curious about
So-
the Trident missile program that Larry Ostarly, we're having a conversation with, was involved with. Larry, there's the Trident
So that
submarine.
looks like the USS Ohio.
Okay.
I have that picture in my
Well,
office.
that's good. I'm a Buckeye, you know.
I have that picture in my
I
office.
like LSU, but I am a Buckeye.
Go
in
Tigers! Go Tigers!
And then, yeah,
So-
to tell us a little bit about how this missile, and there's another picture of it there, broke down.
Yeah, so
A little
so
bit
it's-
there.
So the Trident missile is a 3-stage missile, and it's about 45 foot long. It
Yeah,
fits
here, I'll
inside-
show you with the people there, Marty.
It fits into the
Couple
submarine.
technicians there.
And what we used to do here at the port, I was in a small group called DESO Engineering. It was demonstration and shakedown operations. So when a boat would come out of the shipyard to test all the systems, they would load it with 3 missiles. And then we would convert the 3 missiles to a test missile, put dummy reentry bodies on it, and a telemetry system on it, and the sailors would go out for at-sea test exercises, and we'd test it, and then we'd go out one day for a launch. So the submarine would hover at about 100 feet underwater, more or less, and then they would get the word to launch. And then basically when you would launch from the submarine, it would be like the missile would leave the tube, so the submarine would rise a little bit in the water. It was almost like a really fast elevator coming to a stop. It'd rise a little bit, the water would come back in, and then it would go down, so it would go down. So it was really not a great sensation, but you could tell something happened. The way the missile was ejected out of the tube, it had a gas generator that threw it out the tube, threw it above the surface of the water, and then it would ignite. The first stage would ignite, and it would go up on orbit and do its thing. I mean, in the heyday, I mean, this was part of the strategic triad. There were 41 Trident, Polaris, Poseidon submarines around the globe. There was actually a poster called 41 for Freedom. And, you know, the statistic that used to get me was that the one Polaris submarine, and this was a Polaris submarine with a missile that could carry 3 reentry bodies, had more firepower than all of the bombs dropped in World War II, including the 2 atomic bombs.
Is that one Trident? Wow.
One submarine. So
One submarine.
Pretty impressive weapon system.
I'd
And,
say some is classified and things
a
like
lot,
that.
lot of
but-
it you can't talk about, but
but-
it's a pretty cool system.
But stay curious, Larry. Don't you want to share and get in trouble? No.
Well, there's a lot you can't. I mean, it launches out. You know, the submarines are on patrol around the world.
Yeah, it's something you
have
don't think
targeted-
about
and
as
they're
a proud
targeted.
American, that these submarines
They're
and
on
sailors
patrol.
are all over the world,
The,
under the oceans.
Right.
These were not missile rockets. These were rockets that the Trident II put
This
things
is a
in
vertical.
orbit.
No, well, it would go up. So yeah, so the way it would go, the flight profile, it would go up to orbit. This nose fairing would come off the top, and there's a ring of reentry bodies around here that were nuclear reentry bodies that would independently deploy at independent targets. So it would deploy a reentry body, and then it would deploy another reentry body, and this was all inert. There was no commanding it. It was, once it was gone, it was pre-targeted, so you couldn't deter it by sending an RF signal to it and change a parameter. I mean, and those things free fell, you know, and they were very, very accurate. Actually, there's a range down, you know, when we used to do the tests, there's a range down in the South Atlantic that tells you how close you get when you do your test fire. So it's pretty neat stuff, and that work is still going on at the port. I mean, it's one of those small programs that has really got a big impact, but Lockheed still processes submarines coming in, actually growing down there. I mean, I think when I worked there, it was like 100 people. Now I think they're probably up to 500 people because it consolidated a lot of work in this area, and it's truly a fascinating system. I would recommend anyone who has any interest in staying curious, spend some time reading about it, because it truly has been one of those systems that's helped keep us free.
And it's a system based in the 60s, right?
The first submarine launch was in the early 60s. You know, I actually had some old videos from the late 50s and early 60s where they were doing the flat pad launches off of Complex 25. And one of the more fascinating launches was the first stage of the missile lit. It blew out the dome of the first stage, which lit the second stage. So the first stage is sitting on the pad, looking like a Roman candle. The second stage is flying with a destruct system that's not armed. So this is why the range really is particular about destruct system.
Right.
This destruct system's not armed. It flew over Hangar Y. It was dropping parts in the parking lot.
Oh my God.
I remember talking to an old madman. I'm trying to decide if I can say this or not. A lady who was retiring, and she was in her 70s when I was a youngster. He said, "Larry, there was parts falling in the parking lot. I ran to the fence and I just stopped, and I peed."
Really?
Anyway, this second stage ended up landing near a trailer park in the Banana River, just off the Banana River. So that's why when you hear the range about destruct systems and concerns about destruct systems, they were the reputation of them was well earned, because you truly had to have systems that could protect the public.
Everything's so serious with the rocket launch. Not only are you doing your job, your boss is behind you, making sure you're doing your job, and his boss is behind him, making sure everybody's doing their job.
One
And
thing about
that's the teamwork that you know you so emphasized early on. That is so true. One of the elements I like about this, the space mentality, Larry, is that, and Bob Seek, you know, launch director and your fellow board member here at the American Space Museum, he shared with me several times that you had to admit your mistakes, Larry, or you would get in trouble trying to cover them up, because NASA's attitude was, "What did we do to not train you to set you up to make this mistake?"
Yeah, I truly believe that, you know, the success of the program is based on the integrity of the people to admit when something's not right. I mean, and because the true risk is losing hardware or losing people.
Right.
And I think the program did a great job of instilling that in everyone, to where you were truly not going to be berated for admitting to an error. The risk was when you didn't admit to one, because it meant it had to be found out, and that just didn't happen with any level of frequency. So I think that Bob Seek's message was there. I used to remember what Bob used to say in the countdown pre-test briefings. I mean, he used to say, you know, ask how everything was going, blah, blah, blah. And then if you were working on an issue, he would go through the discussion and saying, "Well, when are we going to be ready?" And then people would tell him when they're going to be ready. Well, and he'd say, "Well, we'll be ready when we're ready. We won't go a minute before we're ready." And he would hold to that. So the goal was to allow things to evolve. You know, you always have what I would call healthy tension to meet milestones. But it was set up to avoid what I would call the pressure of meeting milestones. And I believe that's really important in a program where you have such high risk.
Well, you were in this Trident program for a few years, and then you told me that you had an opportunity to be a test conductor.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
And that you felt like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah, so you were telling me the story a second ago about John Tribe was really unhappy when Rockwell lost.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. And
we were really happy when Lockheed won.
Right.
And my boss, Jerry Owens, who was the original launch operations director for Lockheed, had asked me to come over for an interview. And I remember it was actually an ex-Rockwell employee who was still employed by Rockwell. His name was Andreas. I can't remember his last name, but he took me down into the control room and showed me where the orbiter test conductor sits and what the orbiter test conductor would be doing as far as being part of the test team, managing the launch countdown, and my eyes just got like, you got to be kidding! I could be doing this. I mean, it's just one of those exciting things that it just doesn't go away. And truly enjoyed learning about the orbiter, because you really got to learn about it. They would send us over to the OPF to get familiar with the hardware, to truly learn about the hardware and how to process the hardware. And then we'd come back to the control room and sit on console and learn how to run the different integration test activities. Some days it was truly boring because things just went the way they were supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
Some days it was really exciting because nothing went the way it was supposed to go. But it was really tremendous to be part of it, and a lot
Every
of fun.
day you went to work was a different day, though, right?
A lot of fun. The only ones I didn't like was those third shifts.
Oh.
Marty, did you ever do third shift?
4 years.
4 years of third shift. You loved it?
That's back in Apollo days.
Oh, okay. Yeah, third shift was that was a killer.
That out there on the Merritt Island, all kinds of creatures out there at night roaming around.
It's
and,
just not even the creatures. It's more just the pain of trying not to fall asleep
Yeah,
some
trying not to
days.
fall asleep
Yeah, I mean it's a.
and sleep during the day and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my notes here. I'm listening intently to Larry Ostarly here, but there's so many things I want to get to and make sure that we get to them in a good order for you all to enjoy it out there. Marty, we got anybody saying hi to us today? Or any of Larry's former bosses or employees out there?
Bosses. I know your daughter Amanda says hey.
My granddaughter Amanda.
Oh, granddaughter.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Sister Mary.
My sister Mary, yeah.
And apparently you know Dan Raymond.
Oh, Dan Ramon, yeah.
Ramon.
Yeah, Dan Ramon, he's actually, haven't seen Dan in a while.
Good. That's what Stay Curious is all about, is reaching out through this wonderful Facebook Live. I mean, you can say what you want about Facebook, but they certainly have, this program has helped us be in front of you during this pandemic the last 6 months, and we're so happy how you've embraced it. Marty has worked really hard to bring some of his Space Shuttle friends in there. We're just great to have Larry Ostarly here. He's been on our board now for about a year here at the American Space Museum, and I feel a great asset that you've come on here to talk a little bit about our museum from the outsider looking in and being involved in it.
So this is really a unique museum. It's not the visitor center.
Mm-hmm.
It's a small museum in downtown Titusville, right next door to the Playhouse, and they have truly memorabilia that brings the worker back to their, what I would call their roots, and it's just neat to see it, and I've never seen a more enthusiastic group of people with a passion to share what's going on and what has happened in our space community. And I would highly recommend anyone who has the time to come visit the museum. Like Mark was saying, currently you have to schedule your time to get in because of COVID. We'll eventually be past that, and it's open Monday through Saturdays, I think. And I would highly recommend that people take the time. One of the unique things they have in here is, if I remember correctly, we have John Glenn's hard hat.
We've got John Glenn's hard hat, and just like everything here, it has to have a provenance, Larry. We got pictures of John Glenn wearing that hard hat.
Yeah.
So, and that's so important. And thank you for the enthusiasm. I mean, it stems from our executive director, Karen Conklin, who's been involved with this museum for almost 20 years, and the last 3 as a director, but she's seen it through the thick and thin when it was originally started just for the hands of the astronauts at Spaceview Park. They never envisioned a museum starting, and now here we're actually, after a big lull after the shuttle, those 8 years did hurt the whole area here, including our museum. But we feel like, thanks to some leadership from gentlemen and women like you, we're coming back stronger and taking our museum to another level. And that level is celebrating the American space worker and inspiring the next generation with good programs and some good mini conferences with people who did jobs in our space program, like we talked about here today.
So sitting here just looking where Marty's standing, I mean, those are the consoles that would have been in the control room when I was a working
Yep,
test
I think
conductor.
that's section C2.
So-
you tell me.
yeah.
Yes, Marty.
Since we recognize your granddaughter and your sister, we've also had Amanda Walker, Katie, Hannah Weiss, Cheryl Martin, John Agro,
Algermism, yeah,
Sarah
Big John.
Davis, Louise Bingham, Jerry Billing.
Oh, very cool.
Super.
Very good. Well, at least
Thank you for watching. Like us on Facebook. I've discovered we've almost got 8,000 followers on Facebook. When we hit 10,000, Larry, we become eligible for some money through Facebook.
Oh, really? Very good.
So I know the board members are interested in that.
We're getting close.
Please tell your friends that because we had this is important to us. We put space history. The astronaut birthdays are popular. And just letting people know what's going on, and then we share some of our artifacts in here. And I've certainly enjoyed my small role in here in the museum. But Larry's right. Everybody here's got a passion for this, and I am one of the few people that's not a space worker that you'll encounter here. John Smith was here yesterday. He worked on the shuttle environmental control system. Mm-hmm. So he knew how to keep the astronauts alive with the proper air, not just in the cabin, but in the space labs. He gave a couple tours yesterday. The day before that, we had Travis Thompson, the White Room tech that tucked in a couple hundred astronauts in their seats during his career in the White Room, giving tours. So, yeah, please support us, and we can't wait to see you here. You will enjoy it, I guarantee you.
No, it's a tremendous museum. It really is. It's a jewel in the middle of Titusville. So please take time to come by. My relatives from Louisiana, when you're down, will come up to the museum.
Good. And we have plenty of nice swag to buy here too, to take back to Louisiana with you in there. What more did you want to say about working on the test operations group on the orbiter there with people like Mike Lineback? And
So Mike and I were counterparts relatively early in our careers in the early 90s when he was the head of the test director office and I was the head of the test conductor office. And Mike and I truly had a great relationship working together. And then he left and went to he ended up going over to the space station, I think, for a while, and then he came back as launch director. And I was still there, and we had a great relationship there, evolving the countdown and continuing to work that. And so I truly, he was truly a great leader. I went with Mike when we left. Unfortunately, the day of the Columbia accident, we boarded a plane out at the SLF and flew out to Barksdale and went to Barksdale that first night and helped establish the recovery team for starting the recovery.
Let's talk a little about that Mike Lineback wrote a very good book with Jonathan Ward, Bringing Columbia Home,
Right.
And it's been a very popular book. And so the Saturday morning of the Columbia tragedy, of course, this gentleman, Larry Ostarly, tell us how you were directly involved with that, Larry.
So when the accident happened, I was sitting at home watching on the sofa, and as soon as you heard they were losing instrumentation and you started thinking about that piece of foam that unfortunately hit the vehicle, you knew something wasn't right. So within the next minutes, you knew Columbia had come apart. So I jumped in the car and drove up to the center. And then Andy Allen had dispatched me to go to Barksdale to lead the contractor team, which, once again, it's a team. I mean, a team of people there with a dedicated mission, and then trying to figure out, really in the early days, how to really effectively do recovery. I mean, and you were working with FEMA. I mean, FEMA had the money. The EPA had their own concerns about, contamination on the ground because of some of the toxic propellants. That
Oh
were on
my
the
gosh, the hypergolics and so
propellants
forth.
that were on
Sure.
the vehicle, and one of the most unique experiences for myself personally was that we had received some information from Fort Polk that they had found some huge pieces of debris. And what they had found was the turbopumps from the main engines, which are about the size of a beer keg, weigh a lot more than a beer keg. And the range officer the radar officer at Fort Polk had tracked them coming in at Mach 2.
Mach
2. He had triangulated where they were. A forest ranger contingency led by a young lady actually said they drove over with their four-wheelers. They drove over the turbopumps a couple of times before they realized what they were seeing. They saw what looked like anthills of dirt that they had been going across, and then they looked up and they saw mud 40 feet in the air on the side of the trees, and they dug them out. And I think, if I remember correctly, they collected three of the turbopumps, which was pretty impressive. So that was some of the most eastern debris. And then the Louisiana National Guard with the FBI actually walked the line of where the debris was from Fort Polk to the Louisiana border, and ended up collecting everything they could find. Another big piece they found was pieces of the main landing gear, nose landing gear, all the heavy stuff ended up in Louisiana. And I will say what they ended up doing, that ended up being the best method for finding debris was basically walking the line, because towards the end of the operation, what it had evolved to, they had tried helicopters, they had tried balloons, they had tried different methods for being able to view the debris, but they brought in a bunch of about 7,000 forest rangers, and they walked the line from Dallas to the Texas border to finding debris.
Now, as horrible space tragedies happened, and we lost 7 astronauts, but Larry, there was also something else going on at Barksdale, which is the home of the B-52 bomber. So this is kind of a real parallel of history that you don't
Think about.
think about. Yeah.
So when we first got there, I mean, Barksdale was the largest B-52 base in the United States. They had, I think, 99 B-52s, and the time we were there, the Iraq War started, and all the B-52s were deployed from Barksdale.
2003 February.
Yeah,
March,
all the Barksdale
the Iraq War.
were deployed.
And we were going to get our payback for the horrible terrorist attack.
And part of our transportation we were using is the National Guard had given us access to Blackhawks to take us to the different sites and stuff. All the Blackhawks got pulled back.
Helicopters,
Yeah, so in parallel with the recovery, you think about a nation in distress. In parallel with with Columbia's accident, we're dealing with the recovery of the vehicle, the loss of life, and then in parallel with that, we're dealing with going to war with Iraq. So as a nation, we've always had our challenges.
Yes. Hundreds of NASA employees, astronauts, all kinds of people there in this area of Texas and Louisiana. And tell our viewers how those residents treated you.
Well, I mean, it's really well documented in Mike's book. But
yes,
the residents there were just unbelievable. They would not let people buy anything.
Yeah.
They made everything available to you.
Wouldn't charge you for motel rooms.
One of the things I really remember is, that one of the things you don't think about that made that recovery different than any other was cell phones.
Oh, yeah.
We weren't, in any other recovery, you would have been using walkie-talkies.
There you go.
But we were using cell phones, and the cellular company actually came in and put in additional towers in some of the backwoods areas where we were working.
Wow.
To improve the cellular network.
You could use the cell phones for GPS location.
Well, you could
too,
use
couldn't
them.
you?
I don't. Well, we had bought every handheld GPS we could find.
Okay.
Could find in the area. So I don't know that the GPS was in the cell phone
All right.
back then, because the ones we had were the old flip phones. But the
Miss my old flip phone,
but
I'll tell you.
the flip phone and the cell phone truly made the communications possible, and with ease. And I can remember riding in a vehicle one time, and all four people were talking to different people on cell phones. No one was having a conversation with anyone in the vehicle. And now you think about the way the teenagers are today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Today. So
Yeah.
there should be no surprise. But that was kind of a unique thing with the recovery.
Well, dark chapter again in manned space exploration, but those are the risks, and everybody knows those are the risks. And a mistake was made, and the program come back stronger than ever. How did you feel towards the end, the last 5 missions, and seeing things going so smoothly?
So, I actually left in 2010 to go to work on the base operations contract for which would have been AECOM URS back then, which is now Amentum. And the last launch I watched with my wife and my 2 granddaughters over just by the LCC, the Launch Control Center. And we're sitting there watching it. It's counting down. And it looked like they were going to scrub because they had a last-minute incident. I don't remember what it was. And it's kind of bothersome because the next day we were headed to the Keys for a family vacation. And I said, oh, they're not going to get to see it. So then the countdown resumes, and it launches. And beautiful, gorgeous, unbelievable launch. And my granddaughter, Amanda, who's on there, I think she was maybe 10 or 12 at the time. I looked down.
Amanda.
I looked down at her, and there's tears streaming down her face.
Oh.
And I go, Amanda, why are you crying? She says, Papa, I'm crying for you and Uncle Ryan. So then the tears come down Papa's face.
Oh.
So it's pretty awesome, pretty amazing. But the program truly was hitting on all cylinders that last couple years after return to flight. I mean, it was truly the best the team had ever performed, the best the vehicle ever performed. I think all the shuttle huggers wanted to fly longer. I think we really believed it could have flown longer, but then when you reflect on some of the things that have happened since then, would they have happened if we had flown longer? And because at some point, money does become a challenge.
Right.
And trading money for different things becomes a challenge. And I do believe, like we talked earlier, we're going to have a much more robust space program with the commercial guys, NASA, and the rest of the world envisioning space and working in space. You look at, I was up at the Shetland Islands last year with a small group of Europeans that are looking at building a spaceport in Shetland Island on the very northern end for some DoD missions they have planned there. So there's space happening everywhere, and everyone wants to grab a piece of it. I remember Jeff Bezos saying one time that he envisions 1 million people working in space.
Wow.
Not working on space, but working in space. So you just have to think about, where is this all going to go? We're still in our infancy. 50, 60 years, that's the infancy of anything.
Absolutely.
So it's just really
I
cool.
think of, Wright brothers in 1803. One thing that amazes me is when the news in the morning will say there's 6,000 airplanes in the sky right now. At 8 in the morning, they show this map of all the commercial airlines, and you're going, 6,000 people, 200 people probably average a plane. Oh my God, think of...
you ever look at that little map with the little visual of around the airports?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they're on top of each other.
Yeah,
It's
they're all
just-
on top of each other.
Yeah,
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Before we get, I wanted you to show your hat there. We get your NASA recovery
so-
hat there.
Yeah, so this is the hat that I wore at recovery. It has the USA pin on it, United Space Alliance, and it has the Columbia pin on it.
Larry, did that mean any more to you being a a Louisiana native, and here you are?
It did. It did. I mean, working in Louisiana, yeah, and knowing we were there, yeah, it did. You know, I mean, but it was kind of it was one of those surreal things in life. I mean,
Right.
I just you know, another funny story is talk about people giving things away. Bluebell ice cream.
Mm.
The guy from Bluebell would come fill up that ice chest every day and wouldn't take a nickel for his ice cream.
Yes, that's in
that was
Jonathan Moore and
that's
Lineback's book.
that's
there.
where I put
Bluebell
on
ice cream is very good ice cream for you.
That's where I put on my first 15 pounds that I could never get rid of.
Yeah, and for that's what you. And there's also a nice book written by Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Russell.
No, Lamar Russell. I'm sorry.
Lamar Russell.
Russell, and it talks more from from your perspective of the logistics, incredible logistics involved, trying to just get people there, find pieces and parts of the orbiter. Bringing them back. Did you have anything to do with the reconstruction?
No, I was still out there when they were doing reconstruction.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but it was really, it was. I was glad that they opened up the hangar to let the families see the hardware to truly understand what happened. And
Reconstruction.
huh?
Explain reconstruction.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Marty, they had a hangar to tell us about where they went.
So
they
they
wanted to reconstruct the accident.
So when you look at an airplane accident, the National Transportation Safety Board brings the airplane to a hangar, and they lay out the airplane to really
over a grid.
Over a grid to understand how the airplane accident happened. So they did that with the shuttle. They laid out a grid and the hangar out at the shuttle landing facility. And they took all the hardware and they put it in the grid so you would know where the different pieces were. And what was amazing, I forget how many tons they collected, but it was amazing the amount of shuttle that they brought back. You know, some of the more interesting pieces I thought were a lot of the tanks that came down. You know, the shuttle had all kinds of tanks for holding different propellants for the fuel cells and stuff. They looked like giant beach balls. Mm-hmm. For the most part, they came down intact because they came out of the mid-body and they just floated down and landed on the ground. I mean, the heavy steel parts, they looked like a transmission out of a 1920-something Ford or something sitting. I mean, they were so rusted looking in there. You know, it was interesting to see what happened to the materials, you know, and then the really interesting thing about Columbia is it's in the VAB on the 16th floor, stored in the vehicle assembly building, and there's still universities that check out pieces to study the material science of it all. So it's you know, it was truly a tragedy. There's nothing good about losing people, and it was truly a painful thing that happened. And it really did change our lives to some degree. But in hindsight, I think the things that we continue to do and where we're headed are going to be great for space, great for the country, great for the world, and just excited to continue to get to watch it. One day I'll be watching it from my front porch. Being involved here with the American Space Museum will allow me to continue to dabble in it quite a bit. So I'm looking forward to that. And pretty cool.
Yeah, it's truly a renaissance here, and you all know that because you've been sticking with us to Stay Curious. We've really enjoyed our conversation with Larry Ostarly here, and we thought we'd end it with a kind of a positive, fun thing about the Space Shuttle era, and that's, Marty, would you swing over there to the beans or go?
So,
and this is a tradition that I'm going to have Larry talk a little about. Yeah, we got a picture here.
So this was
kind of a good luck charm over the shuttle era. It started with Apollo.
So Norm Carlson, who was really a vehicle test director during the Apollo program, had started a tradition that was Navy beans and cornbread. And it really started as a very small tradition on the 4th floor of the Launch Control Center, which is the floor right above the firing rooms. and it was mostly the test operations people who'd go up and have the beans. Over time, that continued to grow to where the entire test team was assembling on the 4th floor, and we ended up with bean pot rooms built in the hall, which had these huge, I want to say they were 10-gallon crock pots of beans, probably 20 of them lined up in the hallway there that were being making beans, and the admins from both the NASA side and the contractor side would come in early in the morning and start preparing the beans. And you think about it, the beans had to be ready for when launch happened. If you scrubbed, the beans went back in the closet, ended up in the refrigerator somewhere, and they came back out the next night. So the beans, managing the beans was a pain for somebody.
A good thing that's kind of gotten out of control.
So my
huh?
my admin came to me one day, and she says, "Larry, do you think we could get that cafeteria to prepare the beans?" And I'm thinking to myself, this almost sounds like heresy. So, so Mike and I started talking about it, Mike Leinbach and I, and we eventually got the beans prepared by the cafeteria. In addition, we had the beans moved to the lobby of the LCC instead of the 4th floor. Because when you'd come in the middle of the night, those beans would smell pretty strong on that 4th floor of the LCC as you're just getting out of bed. And then eventually it continued to grow. The beans were moved to the lobbies of other buildings. So it really ended up being a great tradition. And
Tell us about Norm Carlson. And
Norm Carlson was the guy that pulled it together. When I first met Norm, he was in Mike Leinbach's position over the NTD office back in the early 80s. And he was just a tremendous person who truly loved people and loved the shuttle. He just loved being part of the space program.
We have his Snoopy Award certificate hanging just a few feet from us in our workers' room there, which our workers' gallery celebrates all things about the workers. The Snoopy Award, yes, the Charlie Brown, Charles Schultz Snoopy, become the mascot of safety in NASA. And tell us how people are chosen to get that pin.
They're usually recommended by one of the cohorts. I mean, over my career, we recognize several people in my organization with silver Snoopies. But what really makes it unique is the astronauts are the ones that make the final selection, and an astronaut comes and presents it to the individual. So it makes it a very special
little silver Snoopy, like he's
special.
running, and it's flown in space.
It is
also.
very special reward and award.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that people truly love to get.
Were you a recipient?
I was not,
Oh.
So I got a near Snoopy. I was going to receive the Snoopy before the Challenger accident.
Oh.
And actually they stopped the program and I just never saw it after that. So, but
it's a wonderful thing. Norm Carlson, a wonderful man. He passed away a few
thing.
years ago. We have some of his things here in the Space Museum that his family gave us, and that's what we're all about, is keeping these wonderful people in our hearts and in our minds.
So another Norm story. I mean, Norm used to bring for all the launches that he was still
right
with
there
us
in
for.
The picture.
He used to bring barbecue up. He would come in for launch day, and he'd bring barbecue up to the 4th floor of the LCC. And there was a room in the back where, a lot of the dignitaries would partake of his barbecue, and I would sneak in and get some myself. Which was kind of cool. And I'd get to see Norm, and he always had an affinity for my mentor, Jerry Owens, who he hadn't seen for a long time. He'd always ask how Jerry was doing. So that was kind of...
Well, the beans are go. There he is. And notice that he's actually got one of those old printout, the hook together print things on there.
And then right down here in the corner, you see these guys with the beans are go. There's a couple of people back here working. One of those would be me.
All right, that's you over there working. Everybody else is having fun there. Well, I've got my beans here for supper, and we really appreciate you being here and spending time with us, Larry Ostarly. Is there something you'd like to share with our Stay Curious folks out there that I haven't asked you?
Well, I'm gonna do what Mike did. I'd like to donate $1,000 to the museum, and what
You
I
would?
and
All
what
right.
what I would like to do is I would like the folks that are watching to take some time and donate a little bit and try to match it. So appreciate that, and it's this truly has been enjoyable. It's interesting to get to talk about what you did and relive some of what you did over the course of your career. I appreciate you drawing that out, and it's been a lot of fun. So I
You're
hope
welcome. We got our COVID barrier there, by the way.
my
folks
wife
there.
will like this because she's hounds me like
We are
like tomorrow.
too. We are too. But well, thank you. Larry Ostarly is matching astronaut Mike McCulley's $1,000 donation to our museum, and Mike's money's in the bank. And he challenged some of you to do what you can to help our museum, because as you see from a man that is an outsider, he came in, now he's a board on our board. Quality people like Larry Ostarly is what makes this museum special also. We have some great, passionate people, but our board of directors is like none other. It's a who's who of space history as well as the future of space. And we're so glad that you're part of us now, Larry. And,
Well, thank you.
and
No, it's
thank
been
you
fun.
for that.
I appreciate the invite. It's been fun.
You're welcome. And we've got an awesome October lined up. In fact, I talked to Larry as a board member that we need to do something. We've got 9 individuals lined up to bring you a Stay Curious conversation like we did with Larry here. We got 4 on Tuesdays. We got 5 on Thursdays. Next Thursday, we're going to have Murphy Wardman, who is the lead electrical engineer for General Dynamics, and our Launch Complex 36 just across from me here, where we've recreated virtually Complex 36 out there with real hardware consoles. Murphy is part of that. He's going to share with us about all the unmanned launches. I remember meeting Murphy for the first time, Larry, and he was like, "No one wants to talk to us. We just launched all the unmanned satellites that the manned guys learned how to do." And I said, "Well, I'm a guy that wants to talk to you, Murphy." You laugh at that because there is that kind of rivalry among you guys in there.
Yeah.
But he's only 87 years old. He was in here today for the first time in 6 months. And you'll enjoy the stories that Murphy Wardman has to tell, the early days at the Rocket Ranch. And then following him the following Thursday, we've got the voice of NASA, Hugh
Harris.
Harris. Yeah,
oh,
Hugh
okay.
Harris. Yeah, I'm going
Okay.
Hugh Harris, the voice of NASA, is going to share with us there. So
Oh, okay.
I'm looking forward, myself as being a journalist, looking forward to Hugh being with us. And we're going to put our whole lineup on Facebook here in a day or two, but we really worked hard to make this program yours and bring you people like Larry and Mike McCulley, an astronaut once in a while, and Gary Studi that is growing food on the International Space Station. These are the people we want to share a little bit of their stories with you to help you stay curious. And glad that you're out there doing that.
So bringing up Hugh, I mean, there was another guy that we used to work. You remember Jack King?
Sure.
Yeah, Jack King, the voice of Apollo.
Yep.
Yeah, he used to work.
I
with us.
just saw him
He-
on an Apollo 8
Yeah,
retro
well,
thing
he's
on
passed-
NASA's
yeah,
channel
yeah,
yesterday.
He passed a few years back, but
Yeah.
he was quite a gentleman.
I was
get
going to have
know.
to ask Hugh what Jack King meant to him.
Yeah,
too,
he was
so,
really,
So you'll be watching that program.
He used to host a radio show with 99.3, and one of our test conductors would go out and be with Jack, and he would have them, talk about the mission. It was pretty cool.
Super. Well, Larry, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
You're a real gentleman and a real American here in our space program. You've made your own impact in your own way, just like all of our wonderful space workers here have. So we're glad you're with us today to stay curious. We've got a $1,000 donation from Larry Ostarly to our museum, and he's asking you to help us any way you can. I'm Mark Marquette, and we will see you Friday to end our week of bridging the gap between us.
Got a launch tomorrow night.
We got, Marty says you can't bail out now. We do have a launch tomorrow night. We're going to try to bring you. It's at 12:15 Friday night, Saturday morning. It is an important spy satellite, no other way to put it, that they need to get up. It's a gigantic ear in the sky, I understand. And so we're gonna bring you that live launch. It's probably starting about 12 o'clock midnight.
Delta Heavy.
Pardon me?
It's a Delta Heavy.
Oh, it's a Delta, right? A Delta Heavy, the Delta 4 Heavy, and that will be a loud one. And I will be looking through a telescope at Mars if it's clear before that liftoff, as I was doing last night. Larry, can't wait for you to come out in our parking lot, and we'll bring some of you guys out here and look at Mars. It looked beautiful last night. I could see the polar cap, surface markings. That's what I like to do. It really got me going. So tomorrow night, an important launch. We're going to try to bring it to you live as an extended Stay Curious program. So,
Launch Sunday also.
and another launch Sunday and Monday.
Yeah, no, there's
Tuesday,
three.
Wednesday.
There's three at the end of the month, and then there's three next month. So,
Yeah, I
so-
think they just focus on one at a time, get them up and out of here. But we're getting spoiled having a launch almost every week here on the Space Coast. It's truly a lot of fun. You meet a lot of great people. You can social distance up our coast here and all kinds of places to see it. But one fun place is Space View Park, just 3 blocks from here, where we have over 35 astronaut handprints in bronze, and you can go check those out. So, Larry, thank you for your time.
Well,
You've
thank
been a
you.
great guest. We've enjoyed your conversation with you. And I'm Mark Marquette, and we will see you tomorrow and bridge the space between us. Thank you very much.